Welcome everybody to another episode of the SRU podcast with a little revamping. I know you can see the graphics, but that's not what we're on right now. We're on week 3 review. Well, it was a great week, and a lot of stuff happened. You definitely won the pick'ems for this week. I was trying to take a risk
Yeah,
and try to get ahead, but it ended up backfiring, and I'm down 2 games. But the AP polls
it's
came
still a
out.
long season ahead.
Yeah, we still do have a long season ahead. But the AP polls came out yesterday, and there's a few changes.
Yeah, I think the biggest one being Michigan State being the 11th seed, dropping out completely after losing in horrible fashion to an unranked Washington team. They took their spot there in at 18. Penn State, we're going to talk about that game, but they're up 8 spots. Oregon, after their big win, moved up 10 spots. BYU kind of suffering from that defeat to said Oregon, and they're down to 19 after it being 12. And then Miami, after going to College Station, they dropped down to 12 to 25. So,
Yeah, it was.
what do you think of this, the new AP poll? Because I know you're happy with Arkansas. Now they're still in the top 10 at least.
Yeah, we are still number 10. AP polls, nothing really surprised me because all the teams that lost, like all the big teams that lost, dropped down a significant amount. So it wasn't really a surprise on how the it was ranked. I was still kind of surprised about Arkansas, even though we are number 10 in the polls. I thought we would probably drop down to like 15 range just because how we played in that game. But
Yeah.
I'm not mad about it. Hey, but we'll get it to that because that's we got that coming up in a little while.
Yeah. You wrote out here on our notes, you have in bold Bryce's Arkansas Rams.
Yeah, yeah,
But
everything.
before we talk about that,
Yeah,
we have another coach fired. We all thought Scott Frost getting fired this early was bizarre. Arizona State's Herm Edwards now joins the list. Bryce, you want to talk more about that?
yeah. Herm Edwards. It's justifiable why he got fired, but in the middle of the season, it's still kind of crazy to me. Firing a coach in the middle of the season is kind of crazy, especially at the beginning of the season. But he does have an NCAA investigation on. I'm pretty sure it's a recruiting investigation, and they did just have a embarrassing loss to Eastern Michigan, losing 30-21 and starting off the season 1-2 as a program at ASU. But Herm Edwards' career at ASU is pretty piss poor. He has a 26-20 record at Arizona State, and his winning percentage is worse than the coach that they had prior to his tenure at ASU. So it is kind of disappointing if you're an ASU fan getting a pretty well-known NFL coach, and losing Jaden Daniels really hurt them. But if you have an NCAA investigation coming to your program, you're going to have a huge exodus of players entering the transfer portal. Well, how do you feel about this ASU firing of Herm Edwards?
Yeah, so Sunday afternoon, the athletic director over at Arizona State put out a statement saying we appreciate, Coach Edwards for what he's done for the program, but we're looking for a step in the right direction, which is kind of surprising too, because last night Colorado's athletic director put out a similar statement, but saying we're not going to fire our coach. Basically, he's saying we don't care what the fans say. We think that he's still a good job, and we're going to go in that direction at least for the time being.
Yeah.
They're division rivals, but it's two polar opposites of direction they want to go. Because Colorado the last few years has not been good, while Arizona's been middle of the pack good. So it's weird to see that this one program's going in one direction. Colorado's just staying put because they lost Mel Tucker, and it's not really going in a good direction. Colorado.
Yeah. Just that situation is kind of crazy to me because there's another team that we've heard that might get fired at the end of the season, maybe in the middle. Georgia Tech, with our friend Wyatt, he's saying that they might be parting ways with their coach, and I feel like it would be a great decision for them because they're running a 1920s offense with the option, and like
Yeah.
it's not going to work in a Power Five conference running something like that, but we will report that whenever that happens or if it even happens. But we can um we can go to the next topic, which is my
Yeah.
Arkansas rant. Yeah,
Yeah, so my team comfortably won on the weekend. A nice 56-point win over Louisiana Monroe. I went to that game. It was fun seeing everyone, all the players go out there. Basically, after almost losing to Texas and being like, all right, we're going to take all of these frustrations on this small school from Louisiana. And that's what they did. Arkansas, on the other hand, I'll just let you take over.
yeah. This was supposed to be a week where we got our revenge against Bobby Petrino, which we did. We won the game, but this was supposed to be a week to basically recover from the first two games because they were pretty tough games, and we were supposed to go in this week easily win. Let our players get healthy for the big stretch we have coming in our schedule, which the next two games are Texas A&M and a neutral site game in Arlington, Texas. Then we play Alabama at home, which is after what I've seen with our team, I thought we could upset Alabama. I feel like we could, depending on what we work on, because our defense looked really bad. Our secondary is, I'm pretty sure, ranked the last in the FBS, with allowing like 300 passing yards, which is terrible for an SEC team. That's trash for most teams in the FBS. That's very bad. Losing Jalen Catalon really crippled our team, and the missed tackles in that game, just giving up drives and letting them score. Being down 17-0 going into halftime was pretty bad. Well, not going to halftime, just being down 17-0 was just not a good look for our program at this time because a lot of people have us being top three SEC East SEC teams in general, but definitely top two in our division for the SEC. But yeah, I honestly hope to God that we win this weekend because we really need it, and it could set up a college game day in Fayetteville when Arkansas and Alabama plays. And hey, maybe we can have a watch party, me and Will on the channel. So y'all look forward to that if we can make that happen. But
Yeah, I just got it today that they are the 2:30 slot on SEC on CBS. So of course that one's going to be watchable.
yeah,
I'm just saying. Also, we're opened up as a 40-point favorite over Vanderbilt, so no pressure at
yeah.
all.
Hey, Vanderbilt's looking pretty good. They've won two games already, which is very surprising coming from Vanderbilt.
Yeah, because it was an FCS school in Hawaii.
Yeah, but they still they still winning.
So we had 6 games picked with JP last week. We're gonna go through those games. Starting off with a game that I correctly predicted. That was Oregon coming back to beat BYU. I knew I wasn't on the BYU hype train like most people were. I still think Oregon's a really good program. I mean, we have very opinionated thoughts on Bo Nix, but I think finally now he's putting it together with this team. He threw 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 running touchdowns, which kind of in that prime Auburn form. Jaron Hall still had a good game, 300 yards in the air, but overall I think Oregon's defense is a lot better, and I think this is a team going forward we can see possibly in Vegas for the Pac-12 championship.
Yeah, this game with it was 41-20. Jaron Hall and the BYU offense could not score. Like I watched like some of this game, and after like their first few touchdowns, it was just hard for them to score. Bo Nix played incredibly with 2 passing touchdowns and 3 rushing touchdowns, as you said. And he's looking like the number 2 QB coming out the class that everyone expected him to be in that particular game. Let's see if he can keep going and keep playing like this because they really need him to play good and to bring this program back to where they were when the college football playoffs started. Our next game is number 22 Penn State versus unranked Auburn. It was a 41-12 victory for Penn State. Shane Clifford went 14 for 19 with 178 yards. And I'm pretty sure Penn State played a good 4 quarterbacks this game. And their running back, Nick Singleton, went off with 10 carries, 124 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And their second running back, Katron Allen, went for 9 carries, 52 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Penn State really embarrassed Auburn and shown why Bill Napier should be fired and most likely will be fired at the end of this year. Well, not Bill. No, Brian Harsin, not Bill Napier. My bad. Yeah. Well, how did you feel about this game? I know you probably loved it. Penn State beating on
I did.
Auburn.
For the record, and Brian Denny, when they shared the score of this game, when Auburn was down big, everyone just started cheering. So, it's mutual.
Yeah.
2, please keep Brian Harsin for as long as we can. If he's still performing like this, please and thank you. Penn State, they came to the season unranked. They've had good quality wins now. They have Auburn now, and if you look at this week, they have Penn State. Yeah, they moved up to I think it's now 14, which is still really good. They have an easier game this week with Central Michigan, or and Auburn almost lost to San Jose State. But I think Penn State is. You have to look back at the Big Ten East, and it's still a very competitive division with Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan State. Essentially, 4 teams fighting for first, even though Michigan State just lost to now ranked Washington. So I would definitely keep an eye on Penn State, and James Franklin had that contract extension last year. Keep up what Penn State's doing, and make them fall for few surprises.
Yeah. The only highlight for Auburn was Sean Clifford getting destroyed on a QB run play. But yeah, I actually love Auburn losing just because Sam Pittman's first year at Arkansas, we got cheated out of that win against Bo Nix. But yeah, it was a pretty bad beatdown, one-sided beatdown. But our next game, Miami lost to Texas A&M, who just changed their quarterback, and Max Johnson, who went 10 for 20 with 140 yards and 1 touchdown. Offensively, this was not a good game. Defensively, if you like defensive games, this was pretty good because Miami did not score a touchdown with a 9-17 loss, and Tyler Van Dyke 21 for 41 with 217 yards. If you would have read the stat lines for the quarterbacks, you would think that Miami would have won because he had more passing yards and better completion percentage. No, it was about the same. Well, it was a little bit better, but completion percentage was higher from Tyler Van Dyke. And I still feel like Tyler Van Dyke is overrated as a QB. I don't know how you feel about this, but as an Arkansas fan who just had a bad defensive game, you kind of you have mixed feelings on how good is Texas A&M's defense compared to how bad is their offense. But hey, they did not have like 3 players play with the number 1 wide receiver recruit from last year. So who knows? Hopefully they will still be out as an Arkansas fan, but yeah, we never know because it was a team violation, which is usually just 1 game.
Yeah, I agree with you that the hype around Tyler Van Dyke's kind of died down, especially now going forward about the NC play. This was probably their best game going, like, he could have played, and it was a missed opportunity. it was a missed opportunity because this was a Miami team, top 15 ranked, on the roll. People talking about the U is back. Marcus was doing a really good job. And then they have this A&M team who just lost to Appalachian State. Morale was low. A lot of people were questioning Jimbo and like his tenure, especially with the recruiting class. But I think this one was a good win for Jimbo. I do think this is Max Johnson going forward because King Hayes is not as good as we thought he was. But I think that we're going to talk more about this on our episode that comes out on Friday with our predictions. And it's going to be a really good game in Arlington. I wish I was there.
Yeah.
And I know you wish you were there too.
Yeah.
Like you said, tickets are like $100.
Yeah, the tickets are pretty expensive. But we're going to go next year for sure. I'm going to make sure that happens.
Yeah. All right, moving on to an unranked SEC game. We have LSU, who another great prediction of mine, coming in back from behind to beat Mississippi State in the Valley. Like I said, this was Brian Kelly basically coming. Welcome to the SEC, Brian Kelly. And this was a Mississippi State team that, under their previous 2 years with Mike Leach, beat LSU. Obviously, 1 year was a COVID year, 1 year was...
Actually, to correct you, Mississippi State did not beat LSU last year. I thought they did. So that's probably swayed my pick a little bit more, but I'm going to let you keep going. They did not beat LSU last year.
Yeah, but LSU ended up coming back from behind a good fourth quarter. They ended up winning 31-16. Jayden Daniels having almost 400 yards of total offense with 2 total touchdowns. Will Rogers still put up a pretty good game, 200 yards and a touchdown. What does it say about LSU? Because they started off the season losing Florida State, but now Florida State's the last undefeated team in the state of Florida. How do you feel about this LSU team now that they have an SEC win under Brian Kelly?
Well, it is Mississippi State, who's not really known for their defense. They're mostly known for their air raid offense. So I'm still kind of skeptical about it, and I feel like once LSU get into the meat of the schedule, it's going to be very hard for them. I can see them probably making a bowl, most likely making a bowl, but honestly, LSU did play real good, played well, and Jayden Daniels played phenomenal for being their starting quarterback now. Well, since the beginning of the season, but once their season keeps going on, I don't really see LSU being that big of a threat to the better teams in the SEC. They could upset someone, but I really don't see it. So I'm just not a Brian Kelly fan, and I probably will never be, especially because he's on LSU now. So our next game is number 6 Oklahoma putting a beat down on unranked Nebraska with a 49-14 W for Oklahoma, and Dylan Gabriel's going 16 for 27. 230 passing yards, 55 rushing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and a rushing touchdowns. And a great game for a Memphis native, Eric Gray, with 11 carries, 113 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That game, one-sided. Everyone was hyped up because Nebraska scored first on their first drive, and Casey Thompson threw a pretty nice pass. But after that, it was all downhill from there. Oklahoma, they are looking legit. I could see them making the playoffs, especially. The Big 12 is actually having a pretty good season. TCU's undefeated. Who else is undefeated? I'm pretty sure Oklahoma State's undefeated.
Oklahoma State.
Yeah, Oklahoma State's undefeated.
Baylor has a quality loss to BYU. Texas has a quality loss to Alabama.
Yeah. So the Big 12 is looking pretty good. I still see Oklahoma coming out on top of that, probably going undefeated for the rest of the year and making the playoffs. But hey, it looks like the new coach and new QB was a great thing for Oklahoma this year.
Yeah, last year was kind of a good punch for Oklahoma fans because it's all Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams leave for USC. They saw Spencer Rattler leave for South Carolina, which, by the way, he did not look good this week against Georgia. But in comes Brent Venables, the alumni, the longtime assistant to Dabo at Clemson. In comes Dylan Gabriel, who's done a really good job at UCF. And obviously, this was a one-sided game. The only reason this game was hyped up because of the big-time rivalry between them in the 80s and 90s when they were in the Big 8, Southwest, or whatever conference they were in back then, or the Big 12. And morale was really low for this Nebraska team because they just fired Scott Frost. Mickey Johnson had to come in. He's now the assistant, who's now the interim coach for the rest of the year. Casey Thompson's questioning life after leaving Texas, even though he lost his starting job with Quinn Ewers, who is now injured.
Yeah.
But I think this Nebraska team is going to be awful. And this Oklahoma team, like you said, has a really strong possibility of going. I think when they play Texas at the Cotton Bowl later this month or next month, that is basically going to be deciding who's going to be the better team in the Big 10, the Big 12. I still think Baylor's going to be good. I still think Oklahoma State's going to be good. As TCU, who knows?
Yeah, they actually have a big game coming up this week also.
Yeah, but I do think Oklahoma, out of those teams, have the best chance of making the playoffs and representing the Big 12. And I think it's going to come down to one of those games, possibly between Texas or Oklahoma State, deciding whether or not they make the playoffs. Because going forward, right now the top four is 2 SC teams and 2 Big 10 East teams. So obviously at least one of those teams is not going to make it. Oklahoma's going to use that advantage and get that push to make the playoffs.
Yeah. Our next game and our last game of the segment of the episode is a Michigan State number 11 losing to Washington, and Michael Penix Jr. Maybe he could win the Heisman, win something this year because he's been playing great this year. This game he had 20. He went 24 for 40. With almost 400 passing yards, with 397 and 4 touchdowns. And they had their running back, Cameron Davis, with 17 carries and 69 yards with 1 touchdown. But their receiver, I'm guessing, which is probably Michael Penix's favorite target, had 3 touchdowns, Jalen Polk, with 6 receptions and 153 yards, which is great, amazing, honestly. But Michigan State did try to make a late comeback. It didn't help at all because they were they were down by a decent amount because they did lose 28-39. But Peyton Thornton tried to stop the bleeding. He went 30 for 42, which is good completion percentage with 321 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. And their running back looks like he's not going to be a K9, but he looks like he's doing pretty well in their offense with 9 carries, 116 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. So this game was kind of disappointing because they were a number 11 team and they're losing to an unranked team. But if you're a Washington fan, you're happy because you just beat one of the top teams in the nation, and you just made the rankings this week. Will, how did you feel about this game?
Yeah, this is definitely the statement Washington was looking for, because early on in our previews, we kind of wrote them off that Oregon was going to win the Pac-12 North. It was really a one-team division, but Peter DeBoer came in from Fresno State and has turned this program around, kind of the same way that we saw Steve Sarkisian do. And I think, hopping up from going unranked to 18 after a top 15 win like this is good for the program.
Yeah.
Michael Penix, like you said, threw for almost 400 yards, and he had Jalen Polk catch 3 of his 4 touchdowns. This is a team that's going to be scary good coming into, the stretch. Because right now, I think they're about to start Pac-12 play. Yeah, they have a division rival in Stanford this Saturday. Stanford's not that good. So I think Washington's going to put up the numbers this week and make an even higher for, you know, for that Pac-12 North title, because Oregon is the only thing standing in their way.
Yeah, and right now there's 4 Pac-12 teams ranked with number 7 USC, number 13 Utah, number 15 Oregon, and Washington, who's ranked number 18. So honestly, those 4 teams could be fighting to be in the Pac-12 championship, and each is in 2 different divisions. So those could be the 2 teams that cancels the other team out for the Pac-12 championship. So hey, I can't wait to see what happens for the Pac-12 because I love watching the night games. So because after the 6 o'clock games, you have a 9 o'clock game. So it's looking pretty good for what this might be for the last few years for 2 of the big name teams to be in the Pac-12, which is USC. And let's talk about UCLA. Why cannot they not bring people to the Rose Bowl? Like it's a historic stadium, and they're just underperforming with a crowd attendance. It's pretty sad. If I'm the Big Ten, I'm saying if you don't get your crowd attendance up, we don't want you. We will take Oregon instead.
Yeah. You just sound like big game movement because that's all he's been complaining about.
But it's true though.
Is UCLA. It is. You know, it's a historic stadium, about what 80,000-90,000 seats, and they're only selling about 25,000.
Yeah. If that, I'm pretty sure they had like 4 or 5,000 people there last week.
It's like watching the Oakland A's.
Yeah, it's sad.
I get that, you know, it's late summer in Southern California, it's hot, but it's still a good team. Like,
yeah,
yes, the bigger team is in Inglewood, but you know, you're still a top program, and they're probably just sitting around waiting for basketball.
But football is the biggest moneymaker in college sports. You can't just not making money with attendance, being a top program. Well, a pretty decent program. I wouldn't say they're a top program, but they're a good program. Because who doesn't want to play football? Yeah, they're named.
Like recognizable.
Yeah, like who doesn't want to play football in California for 4 years? Yeah, like it's 4 years of football in California. Like I would take that any day. If UCLA gave me a scholarship today, I would sign that without questions, honestly. But hey, it's been pretty bad. So.
Before we head off, there's one game I do want to talk about that's not written on here, and that is I don't know if you saw the ending of Troy Appalachian State.
Oh yes, I did see the ending. I don't even know why I didn't put it in our notes, but Jesus Christ, Appalachian State, they got the college game day and just showed out for everybody.
Yeah, they're putting Boone on the map finally, and I think going forward, you know, they already have. They have one loss already, but they're not going to make the playoffs. But you know, this is a team to look out for in the future, I think.
Yeah, because that Hail Mary was nice, especially it was a bad Hail Mary, but I can't even think of the words of it, but the heads up from the wide receiver coming around and catching it and taking it to the end zone was great. Honestly, probably the biggest moment of this weekend, I'm pretty sure. Thinking about
I can't think of anything.
Yeah, there weren't any big upsets other than the Michigan State, but Michigan State, they are kind of on the decline because of K9 leaving. I feel like Mel Tucker, if he does a great recruiting job, he can bring them back up, and he just got a huge contract last year, so who knows. But Appalachian State is looking great, and maybe we will see them being at Cincinnati in the future. Well, it is going to 12-team playoffs, so they actually have a chance of making it.
Yep. But I think this will wrap up this recap of crazy week 3. Meet us up on Friday for our pick'ems with a special guest who will be You can take over this one, Bryce. You know,
yeah. We are supposed to have a special guest. the leader of the Hampton Hoops podcast. If you don't follow him, you should. He should be on for Friday's episode, and I can't wait for him to come on. It's been a great talking to you today, Will. And
Yep.
I want everyone to subscribe, like, and put a comment. Follow our Instagram and Twitter. Hey, if you follow our Twitter, you could probably get some live reactions to the games that we've been commentating.